Hello and welcome to Community Spotlight. I am excited to be interviewing Adam Barriere this evening, who is running for election to the Goffstown Budget Committee. Welcome, Adam.
Hi, Nicole. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to start off with something easy for this evening. How long have you been in Goffstown and what brought you to town?
Well, Goffstown's really been a part of me my entire life. My parents moved to Goffstown when they first got married, so I was born here. Raised all through Goffstown. And then, I moved out after college and got married and everything. And then, before my daughter was born, my wife and I were looking around for a new home. Goffstown was high on the list because of the community that we have here, right? I knew what I was coming back to and what I wanted. So we were lucky enough to find a house here. We moved back, it was 10 years ago now, for the community that we have here, right? For the schools, for the library, for the Barnard Park, like all those things that I had growing up that I loved. I wanted my children to have an experience. So we came back home.
And 10 years goes fast.
10 years goes fast. I did that math in the car and I said, oh my God, it's 10 years.
Yeah, we've been here 9 now and I can't believe we're coming up on a decade.
Wow, it's crazy.
So why are you running for Budget Committee this year?
I think because I've been so invested in Goffstown my whole life, right? Like it's always been a part of me. It's a community I care about. It's a community I enjoy my neighbors. I enjoy everything we have here. So I look at that passion I have for the community, and I thought to myself, it's a community I want to serve, right? Like I want to help out my neighbors. I want to be a part of something, and I think I have a skill set and experience as the assistant principal at Pelham High School that gives me those leadership skills and those budgetary skills that I can use in the budget committee to help the town, right? So the idea of combining my passion for the community with the skills that I have to serve the people of Goffstown is really something that appeals to me, and I think I can really help out the community serving on the budget committee.
Very good. So speaking of skills, what skills and experiences do you want to elaborate a little bit that you might be able to bring to the budget committee?
So I think serving as the assistant principal, right? Like a huge piece of that is working with a whole group of people, working with different teams. I have to work with my administrative team. I have to work with my teachers, my department heads, and the school board in Pelham. Like that's all a part of what I have to do. And I think serving on any board in Goffstown is a collaborative effort, and that's such an important piece, right? I think a good budget committee member is somebody who can work collaboratively with the rest of the budget committee, right? Can understand those different perspectives and see those different pieces, can work with the different department heads in town. So that's experience that I have that I think I can bring to the budget committee. I combine that with the fact that part of my job in Pelham is to create the budget, right? Like my department heads come to me with requests. I have to review them. Sometimes I have to ask difficult questions, make some cuts, or propose some cuts. I say me, but again, it's a team effort, right? Like it's a whole administrative team that has to work together to do this, and then present that budget forward. So I've seen this whole budget process follow all the way through, from creation at the ground, all the way through deliberative sessions, all the way through voting in Pelham. So that whole process is something I'm pretty well versed in from start to finish. I think I have that collaborative piece because you have to have that. And those are sort of those necessary skills that I think I can bring.
So you actually go through this whole budgeting process, but from the other side of things in your professional career.
Yep. So I mean, I look at it as the high school assistant principal. We started the creation of the high school budget, right? Like then all the other schools get added to it and all that before it goes presented. But I present it to the school board. I have to go through that whole process. So I see the whole thing, like start to finish. I know where it goes. So I've seen the budget now, in this sense, from both sides of the table.
Very good.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of concern among taxpayers that we need to be making fiscally responsible decisions. So I'm curious what fiscally responsible means to you.
Yeah, I think it's a good buzzword, but I think we have to be clear about what it really means, right? Like, I think fiscally responsible is really, it's about having a balance in everything, right? It's not fiscally responsible to say yes to every proposal and just rubber stamp everything. But it's not fiscally responsible to just say no to everything either and just drop it there, right? I think it's important that every proposal is really judged on its merits and looked at and questioned for what it is, right? Because we can't look at just the here and now. part of being on the budget committee and recognizing the budget is thinking down the road, seeing the bigger picture, looking at those deeper implications that come with that. So I think, sometimes we might knee-jerk reaction and think we want to cut some stuff because it can make a dent in that budget, but the long-term effects of that can be pretty big. There were certainly some, when I looked at the budget in Pelham, the budget committee was talking about cutting all these things, and I was just watching on the side there, and I was like, oh my God, if you do that, we're gonna lose a lot of teachers, right? Like in the short term, you're saving that money, it looks great, but the long-term effect of that is it's affecting, our students, it's affecting our facilities, it's affecting our town. So I think fiscal responsibility is about balancing, that so that we're looking at everything for its merits, not an automatic yes, not an automatic no, but really think about all the implications of it, the long-term ramifications as well as the short-term ramifications.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Having a future-looking decisions for the now.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So can you give us an example or two of difficult budgeting decisions that you've had to make in your career?
Yeah. The one that comes to mind happened earlier this year. We had put in, the tech people, department had put in the budget for more Promethean boards at Pelham, which are those interactive whiteboards. They're pretty expensive.
Yep.
We had gotten a bunch, the year before. There were a lot of teachers really excited to get more because they weren't in that first round. But the reality is they cost a lot of money, and it added a lot to our budget. And I remember I looked at my principal and I said, that's a lot of money. I don't know, I think we need to cut that off. And we ended up cutting it in half before we even moved it forward. And there were some angry teachers. They were expecting it. I had to ask, I had to really look at what are the implications of cutting that, right? Like, I know I'm going to have angry teachers, but what is that ultimately going to mean in the long run, right? What's that going to mean for the education of these kids? And those are questions I had to ask people. Like, look, if we cut your Promethean board, what's that really going to mean? And they didn't like that question. But it's important to ask those questions.
Right.
Because before I presented a budget for the town with all that extra money in it, I needed to make sure what was there. And we ended up cutting it in half. And there are still some angry people, but I think ultimately it was the right choice. Difficult choice, but the right choice.
I think that's an interesting look at what happens with the budgeting process before it even hits the school board or the budget committee.
Yeah.
You are doing a lot of hard work as the assistant principal to make sure that the requests that even make it that far are what you need, not a bunch of frivolous things.
Absolutely.
We didn't have Promethean board, or you didn't have Promethean boards to cut at the board or budget committee level because you already made the hard choice to cut that before it even reached them.
Yeah, and I think that's important to remember is before it gets to the budget committee, before it gets to the school board, when you're talking about a school budget, there's been a lot of department heads and people working behind the scenes that have already made a lot of those tough decisions. I think it's really important that the budget committee asks them questions, right? That question some of those decisions perhaps. But there's tough decisions before it even made it there. I think our town administrators, I've talked to them here in Goffstown. They're like, I've listened to them and talking in budget committee. I've listened to the school board presentations. Like they've made tough decisions before it even gets.
Yeah, I think it's just important visibility into that.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, what's one of the biggest challenges facing Goffstown right now?
Yeah, when we talk about fiscal responsibility and finding that balance, I think that's a challenge everywhere. We are dealing with high inflation right now. We are dealing with, the municipal taxes having to take on a large burden of paying for that. It is the reality of Goffstown right now, but trying to balance that with the needs of the town is a tough balancing act, right? Like really making that happen. And I look at, one of the things I always think about is the infrastructure here in town. We have, built schools at capacities, right? We have, with no room to expand beyond that. We have buildings that are getting old, and we need to be, when I talk about looking at the big picture, we need to be thinking ahead of what some of those costs in repairs may be down the road. Because, I mean, if you live in a home, you have repairs down the road. It's the same in schools and police departments, in the library, in the town pools, like all of those pieces. So we need to be aware of the infrastructure concerns that are going to start bubbling up real soon. And in some cases already have, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like some of them are already bubbling.
Yeah.
So what ideas do you have for addressing this challenge?
Yeah, I think it's a long process. I think we have to be real clear in what those problems are. I think, it's important that, not just the budget committee, not just the school board, not just the select board recognizes those problems, but that, the taxpayers recognize what some of those problems are and what some of those implications can be of those problems. I think we can use some solutions in short term, solutions that can be real helpful. I'm a big proponent of the capital reserve fund. I see it happening in, the schools got one and the library has one on the ballot this year. Those are great savings accounts in my mind, right? They're great ways to prepare ahead of time so we're not hit with big repairs later. I look at the capital reserve fund for the schools. Those have been put to really good use. I think of the fire panel at, I think it was Mountain View.
GHS on the
GHS, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
But I want a good working fire panel in my schools that my students are in and that my neighbors' kids are in. And that's costly. And instead of, having these big ticket costs that come out of nowhere and hit us, those capital reserve funds allow us to have that there, have those funds available. They're managed well. They have oversight to them. So they're not just spent willy-nilly, right? I think those are really good ways to look forward. So I'm a big proponent of those capital reserve funds, and I think that's a good solution to a lot of these problems.
Helps to keep things a little more level.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So why do you think voters should choose you as one of their budget committee reps?
I think I'm very good at looking at the big picture, right? I've tried to emphasize that. I think looking at having seen the budgeting process on different sides gives me a unique perspective in being able to use those skills. But I think a big piece of it is I'm not an automatic vote one way or another. I'm not an automatic yes, but I'm not an automatic no either. I'm thoughtful of these recommendations, and I'm very good at working collaboratively with other people, working with the rest of the budget committee, because we do everything as a committee. The recommendation that goes to the town is the budget committee's recommendation. It's not my recommendation, it's the budget committee's. I get a vote on it, but we act together as a committee. So I'm willing to put in that hard work, willing to have those conversations, willing to have those difficult conversations sometimes, and get to know kind of all those sides to make an informed decision.
That's the best that we can ask for, I would suppose. But before we wrap up here, there are some rumors going around that there are some candidates that want to increase taxes by 30 to 35%. So is this something that you want or plan to do?
No, of course not. I don't support a tax increase of 30 or 35%, and quite frankly, I don't think anybody does. It's not true.
So we can just put that to bed.
Yes, I think we can put that one to bed.
Okay, very good. So what else would you like the viewers to know before we wrap up?
I think, you've been pretty thorough in your questions, Nicole. I've enjoyed that. I think it's important that, people recognize, the limitations of the budget committee and want some people that are thoughtful about their decisions, that can see the big picture, that can ask those tough questions, like I said, and I think I am that person. So I think I hope you'll consider my vote.
Very good. Best of luck in the
you.
election on March 12th. And thank you everybody for watching, and stay tuned for more interviews on the next Community Spotlight.